This is Connor Bell.
Connor Bell, a teenager coming into this race, sitting in second spot, and you know what? He is catching your race leader.
He went from sim racing to racing NASCAR on road courses in Canada.
You see that bright blue number 3? That is a driver by the name of Connor Bell, a teenager making his very first NASCAR Canada Series start.
More than that, he won his first ever NASCAR race against IndyCar pole sitters, Daytona 24 racers, and NASCAR veterans with way too many years of experience.
First NASCAR Canada start. First NASCAR victory for Connor Bell.
And today, he's going to tell you how he achieved all of this, as well as give you tips and tricks about racing, sponsorship, and everything you need to get a real seat like he did. Connor started working with me as a student when he was only 16 years old. At age 19, he joined NASCAR Canada and won his first race, and on his second race, he went from P11 to P2 at nothing less than Mosport, one of the most daunting tracks in the world. Now, he went from being a student of the Almeida Racing Academy to becoming an expert coach of the Almeida Racing Academy. And his career as a real-life racing driver is just starting. So grab your notes and let's talk about all this with Connor Bell. You went from sim racing to beating IndyCar drivers, NASCAR drivers, pro drivers with, 5, 10, 15 years of experience in real life coming from sim racing. Like, how?
Yeah, I couldn't quite believe it in the moment. I was, these guys have been Canadian racing heroes to me for many years of my life, so I've always looked up to them, and to be able to go out there and beat them on track, they're not only Canadian racing heroes, but they're people who literally race at the pinnacle of motorsports. Pole sitter in the Indy 500, people who raced in IndyCar for 5, 6, 7 years. Plus, guys who are in the Daytona 500, racing in the Cup Series and the Xfinity Series, all things like that. It was, pretty crazy to come from sim racing, just the guy in my chair behind me a couple years ago, to in real life racing wheel to wheel with these people, and coming out with a win, a podium, was pretty surreal feeling for me.
Let's say I'm a 40-year-old guy who has never done sim racing. I have my track car. I go to track days and stuff. I've been doing this for many years. I can't really understand how someone like you can actually beat these drivers. Like, how is that even possible?
I'd say it's a mix of things. So, there's eliminating bad habits early, not hanging on to certain techniques that are incorrect for too long. And honestly, I'm going to say the best way to do that is investing in mentorship, coaching, like I did when I started. There's also just taking the sim serious, in my opinion. A lot of people, as we see, especially at real track days in the real world, they still have their doubts about sim racing. But in my opinion, I learned 10 times more from sim racing compared to the handful of karting weekends I did. Sim racing in general, not only does it allow you way more seat time, but it allows you to try things you wouldn't be able to try in real life. And I think that's where I really benefited from sim racing. For me, the one mindset shift I made in real life that kind of flicked a switch and allowed me to go from an average driver to winning NASCAR races was literally, and this is exactly what I told myself in my head, is just drive it like the sim. It is the simulator. Don't drive it any differently. Don't treat real life differently. It is the exact same. And as soon as I told myself that, immediately I went like half a second faster.
Yeah, because the fact that you have infinite track time is the biggest factor. Like, just you are able to try so many things, and the physics that are simulated in the sim nowadays, especially iRacing, are so close to real life that you can try some weird things for the sake of learning that you wouldn't try in real life, but that would actually work in real life. You just don't want to try like crazy understeer or oversteer things, because it would destroy your tires, and you have very limited time. Like, each lap costs how much in real life? If you do the calc, like even on a cheap weekend, we're talking about $100 per lap or per minute, which is kind of insane. By the way, guys, Connor had a coaching session with me many years ago. He was 16 years old. So he's been into coaching already for a long time, and he was super serious about, making sure that he was learning everything as early as possible and developing the right habits. So that shows that if you do take sim racing seriously, it does impact your racing technique for the rest of your lives, because it's really a compounding effect, a snowball effect. So that's very important. Actually, it's really a fun fact, because that was 6 years ago, I think. Fun fact, he went from being Almeida Racing Academy student to an Almeida Racing Academy coach. Now he is one of our expert coaches in the academy. Everyone was pumped when we got the news that he was going to race in NASCAR, and then he won, basically. Like, casually won the race. I was so surprised, but at the same time happy. I knew it was possible. We're still not a lot, I think. The amount of sim racers going to real life, we're growing now in numbers. It was a very rare thing 10 years ago. Now it's kind of becoming, a requirement, honestly. Like, if you're a karting driver right now, you need to be very good in iRacing, to be very good in the sim, because that's going to complement your technique, and it's going to allow you, like Connor said, to go that extra 1,000 miles of laps that allows you to try stuff to the most ridiculous level of detail that we don't have the time to practice in real life. Like, I'm racing TCR and IMSA right now, and we have 30 minutes of practice, quali, straight to it. So the amount of things you can try, it's so limited that sometimes I have to spend, 200, 300 laps in the sim to prep for those 30 minutes. And now in those 30 minutes, I'm going to try all the things that I worked on in the sim as efficiently as possible. In tennis, in music, in any other sport, we go through repetition. And in racing, we don't have the privilege to get that repetition unless we're filthy rich. So what you did right now, Connor, is like you're becoming the type of driver that prepares outside of real racing, but still delivers in real racing. And that's amazing.
Yeah, speaking of preparation, like, you were kind of talking about how there's such short amount of practice times before qualifying. For us, it's like 45 minutes of practice, one session, and then you're right in qualifying. And with how the tires wear, you only get 1 to 2 laps before the tires completely fall off in qualifying. So that's been my struggle in the first 2 races was, okay, how do I get these tires fired up, ready to go on lap 1, my first flying lap, and how can I maintain them to be able to get a second lap out of them if I do make a mistake on the first one. And if you look at where I've qualified for both of my first 2 races, it hasn't been the best. P5 in the first one, P11 in the second race. What I'm actually doing in terms of preparation is on the sim with the car I'm driving and using to prepare for real life. It has the same general tire as what we use in real life. I'm literally trying out different methods of warming up the tires on the out lap and seeing how they affect the balance of the car on the first flying lap. So just the level of detail on sims like iRacing is pretty unbelievable, and it's going to allow me when I go into next year to have a better sense of grip levels on the first lap, how I can adjust my out lap to get the tires up to the right level. And it's the little details like that make a difference with sim racers transitioning over to real life compared to people who don't trust the sim.
A more technical question. Let's say you just got in the car in real life after you're prepping the sim. You have 45 minutes to practice. What do you do in those 45 minutes?
It actually starts weeks before the 45-minute practice session. So for me, I did 250 laps before I went to Mosport for my last race weekend in real life. I did those 250 laps on the sim. I wasn't necessarily practicing track-specific stuff, but I was practicing perfecting all the procedures that I'm going to take into the practice session. So, for example, how to make my straight line braking as efficient as possible when I go into real life. How can I really find the limits of the car super early without wasting the precious minutes that we have in the real life practice session. So it's not necessarily about, perfecting your lap time on the sim, but it's developing all the correct habits, all the correct procedures. So when you go in real life, you're not wasting 30 minutes of the 45-minute session on just understanding the car. In 5 laps, maybe you can have a really good feel for the car, understand where the limit is, and look for those last couple tenths in that, 30 minutes to spare that you have at the end of the practice session.
So you go right away then to a very decent lap already in 5 laps, and then from there you just start to polish your lines and to go to the real details of the actual real life track and the surface and the tires and the feel of the car.
Exactly. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Even in the first 5 laps, I didn't do any testing in real life prior to that practice session, and it was like, wow, I've been here before. Like, I've already done 250 laps. I know how the car is going to perform around these corners because the model I have in the sim is like picture perfect. Just the benefit of sim racing when you go into real life, I don't think people quite realize it yet. People are starting to have a little bit more faith in sim racing, but I said it earlier, it's literally the exact same thing, and there's no reason people need to treat it different, because all the techniques you learn are going to very easily transfer over, and you will literally feel just at home in the real car compared to your simulator.
What about racing though? Because so far we have been talking about like actual lap times, but these guys are pro drivers. They're not gonna just let you pass, and then you're gonna be probably like rubbing doors with them. So how did you prepare for the actual battling for position side?
When you say rubbing doors, that is not an exaggeration. In fact, this series there's tons of contact, so you got to be ready for it. So it all started, I'm gonna say, a month before the actual race. I literally watched the past 10 years of broadcasts from Mosport in the NASCAR Canada Series. I watched every single broadcast. It was probably, 2 hours times 10. Literally spent 20 hours just seeing how these guys race, seeing how much contact there is, how aggressive these guys are, stuff like that. I studied each driver individually. And when me and Kane, another lead coach at the Almeida Racing Academy, went to go practice racecraft on the sim, I literally ran him through what scenarios we need to be practicing. Like, okay, this driver is going to be really aggressive into turn 5. He loves sending it up the inside into 5A going up the hill. And we would recreate these scenarios so I could get experience, defending, making these passes, sending it if I have to. And in the end, it literally worked out perfectly, because the moves we practiced on the sim, I did the exact same ones in real life, like exactly the same. We can put up the replay of me and Kane battling on the sim, and then clips from the broadcast, and you'll see it's like literally the exact same. I knew exactly how hard I could push it. I knew if certain drivers were going to defend, like before we even got to that corner, going down the straight. I can't even believe it saying it right now. It doesn't sound real from a third-person perspective, but when you do put in the work, when you study, when you practice all these things on the sim, it pays off, and that's how we were able to win the first race and podium in the second.
That's so cool. It actually reminds me of one thing that I always say to people. When I watch my own Radical onboards from last year, I always get a feeling by just watching the onboards from real life that I would never do that. I'm like, I would never do this. And then I remember, no, that's me doing that in the actual car in real life. It looks scary, but I guess it's because of the thousands of races that we've done. We know how to position a car that looks in a way that even looks sketchy, like going 2 wide or 3 wide in a type of corner that super fast. But when you really understand the dynamics, I guess at this point for both of us, it's a more instinctive move. Like you just know how to place your car in a way, in an automatic way, without having to think too much about it. Sometimes we don't have time to think about it. We just do it, right? The car handling techniques that you learn in the sim are amazing, but the racecraft are the most important, because you just develop this quick automatic behavior to place your car at the best spots, at the best corners to overtake or to defend in a way that just, allowed you to compete with these guys. Because in real life, there's a lot of psychology. There's a lot of mental strength in it. It's elbows out almost literally, because these guys are going to try to win you mentally. They're going to try to place you in very sketchy conditions so that you back out of it. But you don't have to think too much about backing out of it or not, because you have a very technical understanding of how the car is going to behave if you try that risky move or not. Sometimes I do moves in real life that I have never done before in real life, but I have practiced them so many times in the sim that when it showed up in real life, that situation, my brain just took over, and I just experienced myself doing a crash avoidance, or a crazy 3 wide move, or a crazy dive bomb, or even a crazy under over, all those little moves that seem impressive that we did not have the opportunity to practice in real life, but we already have done it a billion times in the sim. And by the way, guys, if you he mentioned Kane, That's Kane Halliburton. He is one of our expert coaches. We are 3 expert coaches right now in the Almeida Racing Academy. That's me, Connor, and Kane. And Connor and Kane practiced together for many laps, trying to fight for position and trying every way to defend and attack at the track before Connor went to the race. And Kane is amazing. He's like stupid fast. He is the one who makes all the lap references for the challenges in the academy, which are free, by the way. You can always join as a free member in the academy and try to get the gold medals that Kane set, which is insanely difficult, but we do have a tutorial explaining everything. You, Connor, you have like access to Kane's knowledge in sim racing. Kane actually never did race in real life, but he helped you beat real life drivers. Like,
exactly.
Take a second to think about this. That's so insane. And I wonder how these guys felt. Oh, this kid, this 20-something-year-old kid, never raced in NASCAR. He's gonna be at the back of the pack, and then suddenly he's fighting for the win. He's winning, and he's going from P1 to P2 at Mosport.
P11 to P2.
That's insane. Do you think your experience as a coach in the academy helped you get better as a racing driver in real life or in any way as a sim racer as well?
100%. The key, I think, to getting from a top 1% driver to a top like 0.1, 0.2, like really at that alien level, is the ability to self-identify mistakes and then self-coach yourself and work through how you can fix these bad habits or how you can fix these mistakes. And in my opinion, I wasn't able to do that very well before I started coaching. I had to put myself in scenarios where I was analyzing other people's driving, whether it's a 500 or 1,000 iRating driver or a 7,000 iRating driver that I'm coaching. I developed the skills to analyze, come up with a solution, and communicate it in a way that is, digestible for these people so they can apply it to their driving. And I'm taking those exact skills and putting it into my own driving. So, I'd come back from a session, even if we didn't have an onboard camera in the car during that session, I'm able to just think about, okay, where did I make a mistake? What exactly happened? Was it too much oversteer? Was it too much understeer? Okay, how can I adjust my inputs? How can I plan better for the corner to be able to fix whatever I'm struggling with? So absolutely, me being a coach makes a big difference in terms of reducing mistakes and getting better as a driver.
I would say it's actually exactly the same for me. Well, I have over 3.5 thousand coaching sessions right now, which is kind of insane to imagine, but I went through exactly the same process. I had to learn what I did so that I could explain how to do it. But by learning what I was doing allowed me to break down what I was doing into smaller pieces and then rebuild that in a better way. I was able to get to, top 0.5%, still with a few bad habits here and there. When I was coaching people, I was able to break those tiny bad habits and really categorize all the little techniques and all the little skills that you have to develop as a driver, which made me a way better driver overall. Like, not only in a specific car and track, but like just understanding the car physics as a whole, understanding the psychology of the sport and how to really get to that limit as quickly as possible. Like you said, you got to a very decent lap in 5 laps in real life, and then you use the rest just to polish it. It would be way more difficult if you didn't have the habit of trying to describe what you do and trying to be fully aware of what you do. And you did that as a way to coach people. So coaching people essentially made you a better driver the same way it made me a better driver. All right, in the sim, you're at home, you're safe, you can crash as many times as you want. In real life, you're in a metal box going at 260 kilometers per hour at Mosport, one of the scariest tracks in the world. How did you manage that?
Honestly, the first couple of laps, you do have that like little thought in the back of your mind of like, what happens if I do go off here? And especially at Mosport in corners like turn 2, turn 4, turn 8, those really fast corners, you do have the thought that's like, wow, this wall is coming up really fast. If I do spin, there's no way I stop it before hitting the wall. So there is that little thought in the back of your mind, but it all comes back to that, mental switch that I talked about earlier, where it's like, it's no different from the simulator. Like, I literally drove hundreds of laps in the simulator without spinning, without hitting the wall, anything like that. And even if I did, I made an adjustment so it didn't happen again. And it's like, you just have to force yourself to make that mental switch in real life. And once you do, that's when the real lap times come. That's when you go instantly faster, become more consistent, and most importantly, all the fear goes away. So it's literally making sure your mind doesn't think it's any different. And that comes back to many things. It's all the prep you did in the sim. It's trusting that when you do something correct in real life, it's because of all the techniques you learned on the sim, and it's all these things piled together that allow you to make that mental switch.
I want to add something actually, because I like to break down anyone's technique in two pillars. You have risk and you have consistency. At first, we have high risk, low consistency, and the more we learn as drivers, we are able to decrease the risk and increase consistency. And if we try to go to the next level, we end up having to increase the risk a little bit, and the consistency goes down. So you're always trying to manage that. And I think it's not that you're taking more risks, it's that you're able to be precise enough so that you can be as close as possible to the limit and still be in control of it, and still know that you know exactly how to do a micro correction at a high speed. You know exactly how to where to force the car in a way that is not going to punish you. There's a good example. I see a lot of people crashing because they're afraid of turning the car mid-corner, and then what happens, they end up going wide when they're on power, and then when they see that they're going off, now they add steering and throttle, and they lose the car at the late exit. So that is one of the examples of how the awareness of the techniques and of the physics allow you to prevent you from making mistakes that would unnecessarily increase your risk, while at the same time getting you better lap times. Because if you rotate more mid-corner, you can actually accelerate earlier, get a better exit, and you're in a safer position. So there's, I guess, a lot of those little things that exactly where to try to feel the grip of the car without putting yourself at a risky situation early on in your practice, and then you're able to just replicate that and perfect it through the practice until quality into your race. You did a little bit of karting, but sim racing was your main focus of technique. Why is that?
Sim racing is just better. I was actually planning on making a video about this, but it's like, to any young driver, like, I actually don't think it's worth it doing a whole lot of karting anymore. You learn so much more in sim racing. And in terms of karting, like, it actually promotes the potential of developing bad habits that you end up needing to fix when you go to full-size cars. In coaching, I see drivers, 15, 14, 16 years old who are just coming out of karting, going into real cars, and they do have a lot of bad habits. They tend to flick the car. They're not patient with the weight transfer, stuff like that. And that's due to karting. But if you just started in sim racing, focused on improving your technique on the sim, you're really not going to have many of those bad habits. You might have a couple little things that just don't work in real life, but it's not going to be like relearning a big thing like weight transfer or relearning how to trail brake, stuff like that. It's just going to be micro little adjustments you have to make. So for me personally, I'd say I learned 10 times as much on the sim compared to karting. And like Suelio said earlier, it's also the benefit of way more seat time. You're able to try things you also are probably afraid to try in karting, or at least there's more risk in karting. It's cheaper by a lot, and just in general, you're able to put yourself in way more racecraft scenarios that are going to be more applicable when you do go to race full-size cars compared to karting.
How can you make a living out of racing? What's your advice to people that are just starting in sim racing? They don't have the money to race in real life. They dream about racing in real life. How do you get there?
Well, you have to know it's very difficult to do so. Hence why not a lot of people can do it or try to do it. But it is possible. And I think there's starting to become more hope for sim racers who do want to transfer over to real life. We see competitions coming out such as Racing Prodigy, having real sim racers go into radicals in real life for a full championship. There's stories like the movie Gran Turismo of Jan literally coming from the video game Gran Turismo and becoming a Nissan driver and now racing in GT3s in some of the top series in Europe. So
24 hours of Le Mans.
Exactly. And it's not only technique, and I think that's the piece a lot of people forget about. it's not only being a fast driver, it's being marketable, learning how to find sponsors. Like for myself, I would not be racing in real life without the sponsors. So you have to, yes, be a fast driver, but learn how to talk to people, learn how to provide an equal return for their business. You know, in terms of the investment they're giving you, you have to deliver something back to them. And, you know, speaking about marketing, like I literally been posting Instagram, YouTube, trying to push out content wherever I can, because at the end of the day, like when you're trying to show that there is a return to the sponsors, a big help is having followers on social media, having people who are engaged in your content, and most importantly, showing that you know how to make engaging content. So whether you're posting a video on your social media platforms or doing it on the sponsor's social media, you have to be able to create engaging content, because without that, nobody's going to watch your video. And at the end of the day, it does come down to stats, it does come down to views, and most importantly, whether they're able to get a return on their money. That's really the most important thing, and developing the skill for that is absolutely just as important as being fast out on track. I'm not getting the full amount from sponsors, so, you know, I think it's also important to think about how you can fund some of your racing by yourself. So for me personally, with the coaching, I'm, yes, doing something I'm passionate at. Yes, I'm helping people out to become faster, but I'm also channeling this money into my own racing. So it's kind of like a whole cycle. Like, you know, I'm teaching people how to become better, I'm funding my own racing, and because I'm doing my own racing, I'm learning things, becoming a better coach, and then I can reinvest that into my students. So it's like an endless cycle, you know, with the revenue from coaching, that's kind of paying for that last little bit that's not covered by the sponsor. So don't be afraid to monetize racing in whatever way you can, and like, you know, referencing what we spoke about earlier, one of the best ways to do that is by content. You know, with the content I'm posting on YouTube, it's getting me clients for coaching. So like I said, endless cycle, and you got to find whatever way you can. As being a driver who doesn't come from a ton of money, doesn't have all the backing that some drivers do, you got to find as many ways as possible to fund your real life endeavors.
That's precise. That's pretty much my life. Actually, I have a question, because a lot of people who do like 1 or 2 years of sim racing and they already want to go to real life. Do you have any advice specifically for that?
It all depends on how many races you do within that year. You know, I don't think there's a set timeline of how many years, how many months, how many races you have to do in the sim before you can transfer over to real life. There's a lot of people who just naturally have, I don't want to call it talent, but they've developed more experiences throughout their life to become better at sim racing when they do get started compared to other people. Yeah, I wouldn't put a set guideline on it, but if you are fast, you know, competing in the top 1%, you are winning, you know, competitions, you are very comfortable in intense racecraft scenarios, then you probably are ready. But whether that takes you 6 months or 5 years to do, it really depends on the person. And like I said, it's not necessarily that it's natural talent, it's just things you've done over the course of your life to better prepare you for racing. For example, if you drove rental go-karts when you were 9 or 10 years old, you're probably going to be a better sim racer at 14 compared to the person who didn't do anything at all. It's just those little things that add up, and the earlier you can start all of these experiences in your life, you know, it's naturally going to become more a part of your subconscious, and you know, you're going to develop all this sort of coordination.
I actually did not do any karting whatsoever in my life, period. Like, I did indoor karting when I was 20 something, after I was already pretty good in sim racing. Like, I just started with literally Need for Speed Underground 1, and then Gran Turismo 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then I went to Assetto Corsa and sim racing and iRacing. In my case, I think I really enjoyed it. Up until like I was 6 years into sim racing, I had absolutely no idea I could make that my job at all. And I think that actually plays a big role in the success of my racing career, because I was doing it for pure fun, not necessarily with an objective of making that a job. Maybe the objective of making that a job adds a pressure and makes you way more self-conscious about everything, and might kill your fun. You might just add some sort of emotional weight that weighs you down and prevents you from improving. I would say that fun is the number one thing, because that's how I got to 10,000 hours. It wasn't difficult. It wasn't like some people might even think, oh my God, he put so much effort. I didn't put any effort. I just had fun. I just wanted to race, you know? Sometimes I was farming iRating in a Formula 3 and I was doing 24 races per week. And it was fun. I was studying piano. I was doing my university. I was like, okay, I want to get back home because I want to race and it's fun. And I know that my rivals are going to be there. My teammates are going to be there. We're going to prepare. We're going to get the setup done, and all that part was my fun. And through that, love of being present and just enjoying it, I think I got way better than if I ever had an objective to become a real life driver. So that's kind of a paradox, right? Because you want to get there, but you shouldn't focus too much. You shouldn't try too hard. You should just have fun. By not trying too hard, you will probably get there more easily. The whole paradox. It's really a true thing. I'm reading a book right now called The Inner Game of Tennis, and it talks exactly about that, about how if you try things too hard, you actually don't learn them in the most effective way. If you stop trying, if you focus on the awareness, on the presence of whatever you're doing, and you think technically about how you feel, the steering, how you feel the braking, how you feel things as you're just having fun and enjoying that moment, you actually lock in and get into the flow state, and you actually improve way more than if you try to say too hard into a corner, you make a mistake, and you're gonna say, oh, I'm so bad. All the internal ego side is actually not helping at all. I guess it was the same for you too, right? Like for many years you were doing sim racing for fun, not necessarily with the objective. I mean, the objective might even be there, but you have, how many 1,000 hours do you have in the sim?
Too many. I'm not exactly sure on the proper number, but I would say way too many hours on the sim. But I totally agree with you. I mean, we were literally talking about this before we started recording. Once you stop having fun in sim racing, like you don't want to race anymore. And then when you don't race anymore, you're not becoming a better driver. As soon as you stop having fun, the whole cycle of like improving, not improving, it completely stops. I was easily, learning the most when I was having the most fun. And that was at the, start to middle of my sim racing career. Once I stopped having fun and tried, being too competitive or caring too much and trying to be too fast, it wasn't fun anymore, and that's probably when I stopped developing. So sometimes I always tell drivers this, like, if you need to take a break from the sim, do it, because in my opinion 10 hours of effective practice is going to be 10 times better for your development as a driver rather than 100 hours being mad at the car, just driving, trying to force laps together. So there's lots of different scenarios there, but in general, making it fun, making it enjoyable is the most important aspect for sure.
Now that I look back, again, I never had the objective of becoming a real life driver, of becoming a coach. But back then, I did many things right by accident, by luck. And one of these things was I was always playing with someone else. I was always practicing with someone else. I was always, having fun, playing video games with a few friends. And we were practicing for a race. And we were sharing setups, we were sharing telemetry, we were sharing, tips. And whenever I got a little bit too fast for that team specifically, I was like, okay, I'm gonna join this team now where I'm this lowest. And these guys are super nice, and we're vibing together, we're practicing, and now I'm in the position to ask for help for these guys. They're giving me tips consistently. So I'm like there, having fun, seeing them drive faster, having this kind of motivation to reach their lap time, so that we can have more fun, because I want to be with them on the top 5 on the official race. And it was all for the sake of fun. And I think the whole point of like sharing it with people is that the social aspect of racing is truly what makes racing the most beautiful sport ever, both in real life and in the sim. You do a 24-hour race with 4 friends, and people literally going to sleep and then waking up and getting in the car, and now you go sleep, and then you wake up, you have no idea if the car is still alive. Maybe they crashed, maybe they didn't, but then you have that whole, oh my God, it's happening. There's a 24-hour race going on right now. And in iRacing, sometimes we have 12,000 drivers in the same 24-hour race of Daytona every year. It's kind of insane. Everyone is there. Everyone's competing. Everyone is putting so much effort into it. And that's, I think, the beautiful side of sim racing that will, get you the most results ever through the medium of fun, through the medium of sharing it with people and really enjoying that process every lap all the time, rather than, oh, I have to see the delta. What about like how far off am I? Am I ever gonna get there? Like this kind of question cripples you. This kind of question really makes you, not improve. So it's a very, I think the social aspect of it is the most important one, which is something that honestly I'm very proud we're able to provide in the academy. For example, we have our league, we have our workshops, we have our pit parties. Pit parties are the best thing ever. I think honestly, just being able to get everyone to go out of the pits at the same time to practice fighting for position with no hard feelings, just like crashing each other if necessary, for the sake of practicing racecraft, overtaking and defending, and practicing 2 wides, 3 wides. This is like this sort of fun that we were able to implement in the academy to make sure that everyone is learning in the most effective way possible. At the same time, we're having fun. This is all to say that the whole idea of seriousness can be somewhat of a paradox. If you're too serious about it, you might not actually be doing the best for you. You will do the best for you if you have the most fun. And then of course, around that fun, there should be some structure. You should have someone who's a little bit faster, who should like help you, fix your bad habits and work on the things. But that's the same thing you would do if you're practicing League of Legends or Counter-Strike. You're playing a video game, you want to get better. You're going to ask, hey, what's the trick here? Like, how can I do this thing? How can I, improve a little bit this and that? You're not being serious about it. You just want to get better and have more fun. But that is precisely how serious you need to be to get there. So it's a kind of like light seriousness. I'm going to call it interest, like fun and interest. You want to get better. You don't have to get better. You want to get better. And that's the mentality shift that really helps.
That's one of like the really cool things we're seeing with the ARA right now. I have a feeling the reason why drivers are improving so much, going from 1,000 iRating to 4,000 iRating in literally one season, and we've seen that countless times in ARA to date. The reason that's happening is because it's fun. Not only are we seeing direct communication between the lead coaches and the students, but we're also seeing like little groups forming within the ARA, helping each other, practicing together. On a random Tuesday night, Wednesday night, drivers will go into a practice session, literally coach each other with what they're learning from the workshops, from the pit parties, stuff like that. 100%. That's why drivers are improving so much, is because of the community, because of how friendly everybody is. Just the environment is so welcoming. And then even new people coming in, we're seeing new people rate of improvement is much faster than when the academy first started, because now we have such a big base of community members. Everybody, learned how to support each other early on, and now it's just like compounding on itself, and drivers are able to improve at a much faster rate now, which is pretty cool to see.
That's thanks to, you, Kane, Kyle, and everyone in the academy. So that I'm super proud of what you guys are doing. It's really amazing. Question, are you going to make your own YouTube episode about the race?
Yes, absolutely. Hopefully a little breakdown of the race, kind of my thoughts throughout the race, and make it entertaining and also educational. So absolutely, I'll be making a YouTube video on my channel. Just my name, Connor Bell. Search it up on YouTube and you'll find it there.
I want to talk about your sponsors a little bit.
Yeah, so when you are going to approach sponsors in real life, when you're trying to get that real drive, don't be afraid to approach companies who, you might not think are directly involved in motorsport, or they might not have a big interest in motorsport, because in my case, my sponsors are 1, a charity, 2, a construction company, a marina, and literally a company that sells printing presses. So, you wouldn't think these companies are directly involved or would have an interest in cars, but in the end, they do become big car fans, and they want to come out to the races and they want to support. For example, my main sponsor, the Diamond Foundation, they're a charity who donate, literally millions of dollars every year and make a big impact on my local community here in Canada. And then, there's people like East Rock Equipment and Pex Marina, who, local construction companies, they sell construction equipment, a marina. So it can literally be anything. Don't be afraid to approach, companies who you might think are random. And, in the end, it might turn out, you're running a NASCAR race because of these people. So I guess the first steps are, like we said earlier, making sure you're marketable, can talk well online, and most importantly, represent these companies to a very high standard, whether that be at the track, off the track, on social media, things of that nature.
Thank you for telling us a little bit of your story here. We're waiting for your no pressure next win on the next races. I really want to see that episode too on your channel. I really like how your channel is growing, and yeah, I'm super excited to see like the actual moves and just see the whole story and to see you going from P11 to P2. Like, it's insane. So I just want to see that. I just want to experience that as well, because I know how intense that track is, Mosport, and how intense the car might be. Probably like no ABS, no TC, no power steering, no nothing, right?
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
So yeah. So like I'm really looking forward for that video, and yeah. Well, let's keep working. Let's get back to practicing. Let's get back to coaching. Anything else you want to say?
No, I mean, thank you, man, for giving me this opportunity to just share a little bit of the story here. Whether it's coaching, racing myself, or doing things like this, I'm just super passionate about racing. And the fact that we have a community of, hundreds, if not thousands of people here at ARA, I think it's pretty amazing to see. So if anybody out there is interested in joining a community like that, finding friends you can practice with and improve together, don't hesitate to join the ARA. I'm sure there'll be a link in the description. And yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Thank you, man.
6 years ago, this was my simulator. Now, I'm a Radical US champion and IMSA driver. My technique in the simulator is what brought me here. Now, I created the Almeida Racing Academy, a place where members can participate in weekly broadcasted championship races, practice sessions, coaching workshops, and much more. We already have 11,000 students in the academy, and we're growing faster than ever. Our membership gives you everything you need every week to improve consistently and become a competitive driver. So join now as a member, and I will see you on track.